So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all. My name is Philip Guarino, and I'm the co-chair of Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs Programming and Engagement, and a chair of our Paris chapter. And I'll be your host today. For more information about our programming, membership, and sponsorship opportunities, please visit us at harvardae.org. Smart cities, we've been hearing a lot about them, but what exactly makes a smart city? What are some examples of excellence in innovation? What works and what doesn't? Here at Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs, we'll be examining these questions and looking at cities around the globe that are at the forefront of changing how we live. Over the coming months, we'll be bringing you examples of innovation from different cities around the globe. Today, I'm honored to be joined by experts Dr. David Ricketts of Harvard's Technology and Innovation Center, who will give us an overview of the smart city. And then we'll hear from Marco Pironti and Nicola Farronato from the city of Turin, Italy. They will discuss the transition from smart city to smart communities to Torino City Lab ecosystem and their vision for smart mobility. We want to make sure that we have time for questions from the audience. So our formal presentation will last about 30 minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat box on the right, and we'll be sure to get to them. To introduce our topic today is Dr. David Ricketts, an expert in innovation. A bit about David. He is an award-winning innovator and global thought leader in the theory and practice of innovation. He has helped boost creative thinking and bring cutting-edge ideas to reality in top companies such as MasterCard, Disney, and General Motors. He received his PhD from Harvard, where he's an innovation fellow researching how organizations transform ideas into innovation. His breakthrough research and innovations have been featured in worldwide news outlets such as Popular Science, Smithsonian, NBC, CBS, and Fox News. His teaching and insights leverage over 20 years of corporate R&D and academic research. Dr. Ricketts helps organizations drive success through innovation with his dynamic keynotes, executive consulting, and innovation masterclasses. David, welcome back to HAE. It's a pleasure to speak with you again.
Thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure. Great discussions, great thought leadership. So happy to be here.
Thank you. So to get started, you lead the innovation program at in the Technology and Entrepreneurship Center at Harvard with a strong focus on smart cities. How do you define a smart city, and how do cities innovate?
So I think that's a great question. Just to give everyone a little bit of context, the Smart City program that we run encompasses cities all the way from Perth, Australia, through Moscow, Tel Aviv, Johannesburg, Helsinki. So we really had sort of a global view. And I think our two speakers coming after are two of the world experts. And Turin is a fantastic city. So I'm really excited to learn more about their perspective on this. When we think about smart cities, so I entered this space as someone interested in innovation and being in a world of technology, of a PhD in technology. And so I entered the space trying to understand what a smart city was. And I would have to say for the first 2 or 3 years, that was the question I asked is, well, what do you mean by a smart city? I don't understand what smart city means. And I think what's interesting is I believe it started historically as a few tech vendors wanting to rebrand a new technology revolution and adoption in cities. A number of companies had different ways they phrased it. Some companies had called them future-ready cities. Some called them smart cities. And I think smart cities resonated, one, by the way, from communication. It's just a simple concept, but also this idea of let's move beyond our legacy thinking of a city as just somebody who keeps the lights on to somebody who's actually thinking about our communities. And to me, I think that's what resonates with all of us is the city's now getting smart. It's not just doing, it's being smart about what it is. And I think, that's translated early on. I think a lot of people were looking at how technology could advance the citizens in a city. And I think it has a tremendous capability. But I think people have gone well beyond that. I think really what we're in now is people start to think of smart cities as really the city putting on its hat to think, what can we do for tomorrow, to be proactive? And when you ask, how do cities innovate? I think cities have one of the best mandates to innovate. When we talk commercially, it's about making profit or increasing revenue, but in a city, it's about improving people's lives. And to me, innovation doesn't get any more important than when we can do that to increase citizens' experience and their enjoyment of life in our cities. And so today, when I look around the globe, I see a couple things happening. One is cities have gone from it's our job to fix what broke yesterday to it's our job to create the future of tomorrow. It's no longer our job to do what we've done just before, but it's our job to learn what we should be doing new in the future. And I think also every city official, I think, always embraces the citizens of the city. But I think now they've started to apply more modern thoughts in innovation. One example is in design thinking, into really building services that are citizen-centric and trying to understand how these services can really provide more value, both in through some of the feedback from citizens, but also in understanding what's not spoken by citizens. So I see this innovation trend really just with the cities realizing they can create, they can do new things, they can incorporate new ideas of citizen value and some of the great technology that's coming out.
Absolutely. A far cry from our discussion on the David actually joined us for a podcast, wonderful insights into smart cities. And I fondly remember a discussion, David, about the potholes in Boston. So we've moved a bit beyond potholes. Yeah. We're talking about this type of innovation. But so what do you think the biggest challenges are today? And how are cities addressing these?
So it's interesting. So I just got off the phone this morning with one of the major boroughs in London. I've spoken to Dublin, Ireland, several of the cities in the US. I think most cities today have realized that innovation and being smart is something that should be part of the equation or part of the policy. So I think we've made a great stride and people are realizing that. I think the biggest challenge right now is the innovation has been led by maybe one or two key individuals or a small pocket. So it's really, how do you scale some of these, if you will, these early adopters of innovation and make it more of a culture of innovation throughout the entire organization. So I think that is one of the challenges. I actually don't think technology is a challenge. I mean, one of the things we'll all experience is video conferencing was available 3 years ago. No one used it. Now everyone uses it. So I think technology adoption is no longer the barrier we had, although there's a lot of great new technologies out there. I think the other is the transition from responding to citizens' requests. So we were talking about the example, if you go into Boston and you ask a citizen what's wrong, they say, well, you need to fix my potholes and I want my school bus to arrive on time. They're not thinking about how remote learning could affect the way that their children grow up, the work opportunities, about the economy, about how services could be provided better. And so I think the other challenge is that cities are starting to and need to understand to think beyond the traditional. And I think they're already starting to do that, but more needs to be done.
Sure. And how are you seeing that cities are addressing some of these issues?
So I think, it's interesting if we look at the geographic around the world. So in the United States, we created what we've begun to call the Chief Innovation Officer within cities. And it's very focused on the US. And so what cities are doing in the US is they're identifying a person to lead this charge of innovation. And it's as much a public-facing statement that innovation is as important as it is to hire the right people. When we look at Europe actually, I think, was well ahead of the US in understanding how technology and innovation can apply. And I see some of the cities really starting in Europe to, I think we're going to hear later about one of the cities' innovation technology labs, which are super critical. There's several centers and collaborations with universities that have been very productive. And then also just the general education on what is innovation and how can we teach that to our people, I think have been really successful and are really starting to grow. And I would say, we're like everyone else in the industry. There are leaders and there's laggards. And I think we just need to really learn from some of those leading cities like Turin, Dublin, London, Barcelona, and a few others in Europe. So super excited, like I said, to hear from my colleagues about their thoughts too.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Thank you. So here to discuss the example of Turin is Marco Pironti. Marco Pironti is the Deputy Mayor of Innovation, Smart City and ICT Systems of the City of Torino. He's a Professor of Innovation Management and Entrepreneurship at the University of Torino, Computer Science Department, a Dean of ICXT Interdepartmental Innovation Center, and a member of the Scientific Committee of the PhD Program in Innovation for Circular Economy. He's an author of more than 100 articles and other publications. His main research interests are related to strategy, innovation management, and business modeling and planning. Marco, welcome.
Hi, Philip. Thank you for your invitation. And hi, David. Nicola and I met David before the COVID in Boston, and now the world has changed.
It is, but we're able to connect here thousands of miles away, so I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. Marco, just to start off, Turin is a city that's known worldwide for its history as a center of the automotive industry, namely as the headquarters of Fiat. How is Turin now transitioning from the automobile city to the smart mobility city?
I try to share a short presentation, Philip.
Great.
Hope you see that. Yes, for Torino, the topic of mobility is crucial for the future of our territory. Our city, as you can see, has a long industrial heritage linked to the automotive industry. Not only big players like Fiat, FCA, and now Stellantis, but the whole system of suppliers and the supply chain, and they show small and medium enterprises that the real mechanism of Italian economic system. But now the new challenge for the city of Torino is to move from car to mobility, from product to mobility as a service. To do this, we have put in action our vision of a smart city by creating the Torino City Lab, an open-air platform aimed at creating simplified conditions for companies interested in conducting testing in a real context of innovative solution for urban living. In this context, the collaboration with specific smart communities related to the topic of smart road, for example, or the collaboration with one of the main worldwide accelerator like Techstars represent the main pillars for this transition. The topic for us is very challenging, but the challenging question is how to move from the smart city to a city as the sum of smart communities. Because different communities, like you can see, air mobility, smart road, or manufacturing communities, or aerospace district, for us is one of the main industry on our territories. So these different communities have different needs, different technology readiness level of their innovation, and need different infrastructure. As you can see in this slide, this is the map of the city we are planning for the future, based on, as we call, circular innovation model. It's fundamental that all communities could coexist on this territory and develop in a synergy context. This is, in our opinion, the real role of the city, because I believe that the role of a city is not to innovate, but to make it possible and easy for all players, firms, citizens, public and private institutions, not only by helping local players through grow and scale up, but also by attracting players from abroad. If you think about it, a local public administration can do not much in the field of innovation. It has few resources, skills, and does not have the correct time to make innovation. But the sitting in Torino, supported by this project, Torino City Lab, has to help all players, as you can see, universities, research center, incubators, multinational companies, small and medium enterprises, startups, to translate their innovative ideas into day-to-day activities tested in a real urban context. In my opinion, we need to change the paradigm. We are working on technological infrastructure, but the crucial problem is not the technology, but the human capabilities to capture to all its potential. The real challenge is to bridge this gap by developing new skills and all intangible infrastructures and the new and innovative technology transfer methods. Innovation is not a choice for us. Innovative processes go on with or without us. We can only choose what role we want to play in this process. We are now at the crossroads to undergo the effect of innovation, or as David said before, be an active or proactive part of it. This is the real benefit for all of us, and this is the challenge that the city of Torino want to face. But cities must also have the courage to test the more external frontiers of innovation, and Torino is trying to do it. This is the time to make a change and for taking responsibility for this change. This is not the time to distinguish good innovation from bad innovation. There is no good innovation and there is no bad innovation. We have to make innovation with a real social impact, a real environmental impact, with an economic sustainability. I'm strongly confident about that. To conclude, for us, it's essential to compare ourselves, our vision, our ideas for the city of the future with the other international communities and networks, and define common path of development, including innovative ones. In this case, Harvard Alumni is certainly one of the main and significant benchmark for our idea of smart city and for the sustainability of our project. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Marco. So Nicola Farronato. Nicola is an Italian manager and an entrepreneur with 20 years of international business development experience and 10 years of tech entrepreneurship experience in Ireland, France, and Italy. And Nicola founded 3 startups, Bismarck, Back to Africa, VCNY, focusing on emotional marketing, travel tech, and social impact, raising more than €5 million. He is currently head of innovation of the innovation team for the city of Turin and co-author of the book, Love in the Startup Era. Nicola, welcome.
Hi, Philippe. Thank you very much for, there we go.
Yes.
Thank you very much for this introduction, and thanks for this invitation. It's a great pleasure.
Wonderful. Torino City Lab drives the innovation strategy of Turin. What role does smart mobility play in your work?
So thank you for the question. I prepared a few just visuals as well that I would like to share with you, just to introduce a little bit our idea and continue actually the arguments that our Deputy Mayor Marco just introduced. I would like to start with a slogan that we have adopted. Turin, the city partner of innovation. So one of the first days we spent together in office about 20 months ago, I think we shared the first idea at the basis of the fundaments of the strategy we wanted to implement. And this idea was something like, which role do we expect the city to have with regards to innovation? Do we want just to be passive? So innovation is happening from research, from industry, and we just see emerging technologies to come and go, and we do zero. Do we want to be just hyperactive, proactive, and create innovation? Or do we want to be enablers of innovation? So I think that this slogan, Turin, a city partner of innovation, is really trying to connect the demand and offer of innovation with a public-private collaboration view. And that's a little bit the starting point to move a little bit forward. Then there is a small anecdote that I would like to quote, because we were again at day one, and looking at the agenda of Turin was it was a little bit like looking at a smart city with a startup agenda. So we came here, in fact, with less than 24 months mandate, which typically is the time that you start testing your idea, you pivot a little bit, you validate, and if you're lucky and good, you can scale it up. So that's exactly what we have found when we started this job as core innovation team in the city. And that's a great starting point, because the fact that Turin decided to be a city lab just a couple of years ago and to address really the culture of change, the transition from a post-industrial city to a smart city, and then therefore to nurture smart communities has been a great starting point for us. This starting point, of course, needs enablers. And the great enabler of innovation in Turin, I think, it's the innovation culture and the innovation platform of Turin City Lab. Basically, Turin City Lab is an open innovation way to look at the role of a smart city with regards to innovation. And that basically is trying to connect a few dots that I try to summarize in numbers. First dot is the ecosystem. So a city alone cannot go through the complexity and the challenges of emerging technologies and of this disruption happening at global scale. That's why Turin has decided to put together an ecosystem to accompany the city through the innovation waves. So today the city has formalized an ecosystem of more than 70 partners. We are growing this, and that's one of the main achievements that we have done so far. Second point is experimentation. A city can accelerate its role of enablers between demand and offer of innovation if it opens up a little bit the urban landscape for experimentation. That's why the City Lab approach is about enabling and opening doors to as many experimentations as possible. In the last 24 months, we have launched about 50 projects and 5 challenges to stimulate the bottom-up innovation in particular. And then, of course, the third very important dot is timing. When do you want to do this, or when do you want to achieve this? Well, in my opinion, a smart city needs to start thinking like a startup. So we have less than 24 months probably to prove, test, scale it up. And that's the big challenge and the little bit of achievement we are trying to bring to this mandate. So the ecosystem is a mix in between corporate, startups, research, venture capital, and different sectors. That's where diversity is a great element, a great ingredient to develop different forms, different implementation of innovation. Diversity is difficult to manage most of the time. It's difficult to engage and to keep the momentum with each and every partner. this is probably unrealistic. That's why we aim to foster an open innovation environment in which players can go in and out, and they can try to stay close to the city when they think they can have impact. So they think they can really make the difference in a specific project. The three main assets, or the three main dimensions that we use to look at smart mobility are building a story, which in my opinion can be a very interesting story to develop and then validate. And the story is about a multi-dimensional approach to smart mobility. If we look at smart mobility today, the first thought probably is to smart road. So connected and autonomous vehicles, and why not, of course, Turin, the city of automotive. But that's just a starting point. What you see now projected is a great asset that we have in Turin, which is a 35-kilometer pre-authorized urban circuit for testing connected and autonomous vehicles. This is what we call Smart Road, Turin Smart Road. Behind this project, there is the intention, of course, to hybrid the analogical vehicles with the connected vehicles in a way, and of course, to build and empower the infrastructure. So I will use infrastructure quite a few times in the next few seconds, just because it's probably the fil rouge, it's probably the backbone connecting smart road with other dimensions of smart mobility. In fact, urban air mobility is another dimension which we have been investing towards, and we are carefully looking at in terms of experimentations, contaminations, and open innovation for the city. It is about drones, of course, as a main keyword about this vertical, but it's about quite a few emerging technologies which are enabling drones to perform a number of missions, to perform a number of use cases helpful to the city. In fact, drones, just in the recent months, we have run experimentations with environmental use cases, with outdoor monitoring of the territory and of the city, with smart logistic. So trying to start exploring the last mile multimodal transportation, leveraging urban air mobility. And also in terms of indoor flights of drones, inspections and sanitization operation, thanks also to collaboration with a US-based company, which has been listed in NASDAQ yesterday, named Skypersonic, now part of Red Hat. But if we move further to this and continue the escalation of smart mobility, well, the next step is space mobility. So space mobility and space economy are a trend. They are effect, probably growing double digit, attracting investments and attracting momentum from a number of players. And the good thing is that space mobility is using a bit of technology, a bit of knowledge, a bit of the energy that smart road and urban air mobility are sharing. In a nutshell, our view is, can we generate a new paradigm when a smart city talks about smart mobility, an open, integrated smart mobility? How can it look like? Well, in our opinion, it could look like something like this: a powerful infrastructure, which again, in terms of leveraging the open innovation funnel, can see emerging technologies in and out to empower a common backbone, which can generate the possibility to connected and autonomous vehicles to interact with drones and then with the space carrier or space objects, and vice versa, of course. So the trajectory that we see for our smart city with regards to a very important dimension as smart mobility is a sort of 3D environment in which we move and fluctuate from smart road to urban air mobility to space mobility, leveraging the city as a home for emerging technologies. So the city is an enabler, opens up to emerging technologies which can leverage and can be deployed to make smart mobility more interesting, more integrated, and more connected. I think that this is the basics that I wanted to share, and then open up our panel from here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicola, and congratulations to you and to Marco for all of the amazing work that you're doing. It's truly inspirational. So I'd like to start with questions that were pre-submitted, and there are a couple of interesting ones. Let's see. We will start with, here's a slightly challenging one. Why aren't US cities asking for smart cities experts? Why is it not on the visible agenda? Who would like to take that one? I think I know who would like to take that one. Sure. David, you're on mute.
Yes, I was trying to be respectful and not make background noise. So yeah, I'd be happy to jump in on this. And I think, you know, part of the challenge is that I think smart cities is a term that different cities are using in different ways. It is surprising me the sophistication that's going on in sort of the planning and the maturity maps that Europe has been doing is not going on in the US. I think some people have kind of described the US as a little bit more like the cowboy mentality, you know, and that's good. That's good and bad. That's the, you know, we'll just go and do whatever projects we want to do. And that's typically what happens. So I think the reason why the US cities haven't been asking for more help is they haven't gotten to smart cities as a global city strategy. It's been more of individuals or a small focus. And so I think as we mature, I think some of the cities are looking for how do we put those roadmaps together. I would like just to, I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs on the line, and we talk about, you know, dynamics and economics for the market. One thing that lacks in the US is a unifying funding source for collaborative projects. And so there's a lot less of those programs that I see in Europe tying academia, cities, regions together. And I think that's one thing that certainly would help a lot more in the US.
Excellent, thanks. And a question for you, Marco or Nicola. Question from Luke, something you still question or challenge yourself about daily? And I know you're jumping at the opportunity.
They're looking for the unmute button.
Well, if I can add a comment on this, Philip.
Sure.
I think that we should question about the majority of the things that we are mentioning in our presentations, because that means applying the how can I say, the continuous transformation approach. So what is true today is not necessarily true tomorrow, or at least we don't solve the problem of tomorrow with the same approach, the same bits, the same technology that we are using today. So the fact that the smart city, we like to see a smart city, a continuous transition powered or empowered by smart communities, makes all this very fluid, all this transaction and transition very fluid. And we need to consider the fact that citizens of our, the key stakeholders of our cities are hungry to know more about the city plans, the developments, the new emerging services that technologies will enable. So the focus to the end user of the innovation we are trying to build, I think, is the question, or at least the mother of the questions that we try to look every day.
Great, great. And we have a question from Nate as well. What challenges must an existing city overcome to become a smart city?
I'm gonna allow Nicola or Marco to jump in on that one. I have some thoughts, but I'll let the city experts go first.
Marco, do you want to comment this or?
Go, please, Nicola.
Just a very quick thought. Just a very quick thought. Again, smart city is not a stamp, in my opinion, right? It's something that you need to achieve day by day. And again, it's in motion. It's a concept in motion. So you probably never reach the full status of smart city. So if we will be able to continue stimulating the city and the culture to evolve towards an ideal, maybe utopic concept of smart city, probably we will be able to incrementally improve every day and sometimes radically generate transformation.
Yes,
So,
if I may add a quick reflection, the key factor for us is a correct public and private partnership. In Italian context is fundamental because you have to merge the potential of private sector with the capabilities of public administration. And our engagement is based on a basic rule. Each partner we want to collaborate with us has to declare what is the contribution and what is the expected payoff. This is the basic rule we want to put on the table when we start a new collaboration.
Philip, I would just like to add, if we're looking at Nicola's talk right before, I think one of his last slides, he showed sort of mobility to drones to space. And that is a very, very forward-looking kind of perspective, particularly when you think about cities who start with, fixing roads and having parking tickets and permits. And so I think one of the first enablements for smart cities is to start to have these discussions of what the city could be. And I think Nicola just showed a great example of really stretching that thought out far. But I think when you do that, then you start to have big ideas, and those big ideas have some intermediate ideas that maybe get you along the way. And as you said, you don't do it all in one day, you do it incrementally with smaller projects, but I think having that vision that you shared is so important.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question from Michael. Do you believe that mobility silos are evaporating? We have a tough audience, as you can see. Yeah. So everyone's jumping on these questions.
I'm going to say no okay. from the U.S. perspective, but we don't have nearly as an integrated transportation system as Europe. So I'll let Marco or Nicola come in and speak to their Europe perspective.
Well, an example, if I can quote an example, right, which is about smart road. So the kind of, what's happening at mobility level, in my opinion, is there is a discussion around traditional players innovating what's the status quo and new entrants willing to jump into this whole connected and autonomous vehicles. And I think that, again, if we look at an open innovation approach, the city should aim, at least the role of the city, should be that of creating the best conditions to attract innovators to come to the city, test, experiment, wherever they come from. This, for example, connects with a couple of recent activities that we have been able to organize in Turin. first activity is to create quite an exclusive acceleration program for international startups about smart mobility. And on the other hand, launch a quite a unique program, which is called Turin Reshoring. And this program basically is about targeting niches of R&D and tech companies from diverse markets to look at the Turin ecosystem and participate to the research and developments in progress. How do you participate? Well, typically you can have a virtual or physical team in here connected with our ecosystem and be part of this movement, of this transformation. The demand we are having from the market to date is quite a lot about smart mobility, again, in its wider and more holistic view. So I think that silos will, in some ways, be fertilized and contaminated by quite a lot of demand coming from many geographies, and trying to look at cities for a vocational development and view of the mobility of the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicola.
You have another question?
The contamination context is the idea of this competitive arena that we want to create, in a competitive arena where all players can collaborate with each other, but starting from the real need of in a real urban context, and put in action our infrastructure, our asset, our public companies to match the real need with a real innovative idea with an effective social impact. For us is fundamental, this aspect.
Right. Thank you, Marco. So we have a question from Veronica. She says, thanks so much for such an interesting conversation today. My question is, how can a smart city be inclusive and so diminish the digital gap?
So we recently had a conversation with Los Angeles and Birmingham, Alabama about exactly this. And so a couple things we're interested. So for instance, Birmingham has a large group of underrepresented people. And one of the things they've done in COVID is to actually put specific programs dedicated to those underrepresented or diverse groups. And one of the comments that was made was, well, what do you do differently? And the answer was, we didn't do anything differently. We just called them first because we had a limited number of resources. So it's just a prioritization and a making aware. But one of the things that came from a smart context from Los Angeles is they pointed out that having disaggregated data. So one of the challenges they have in the city is the data includes everyone in one bucket. And they found, as they were able to track different and diverse groups, they were able to understand more of the trends. So I think one of the things that we can do is start to basically gather data and analyze data in a more granular way that allows us to understand the different groups and participants in the city. So that's just two perspectives from some US cities.
Interesting. Any comments from Turin? All right.
Just a very quick one, Philip. Speaking about what has happened last year, we have been, in my opinion, putting together a project able to connect innovation and innovators with inclusion. And that was during the first lockdown. This project was named Turin City Lab. So the love for innovation deployed for more inclusion. And it basically has been a rollout of about 100 micro projects provided for free to our community by the partners of the city. So you imagine companies from the digital TLC mobility, putting their know-how, their assets, their resources for creating some services, some new services, and some new opportunities for specific categories more damaged by the lockdown and the situation. So it has been quite an interesting experience.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Just another reflection for a public administration. Digital divide is one of the main problems highlighted by the pandemic moment. And we are not ready to face this huge problem. But it's not only a technological problem, but also a cultural problem for us, for Italy, and we touch with our hands this gap between the human capabilities to understand the technology and put in action the potential applied the potential capabilities for this.
Great, thank you. And a question from Ivan. He would like to know, how have politics affected your progress? I know you love this question, yes. Sitting in City Hall, yes.
So I not being within a city, I'll just share one of the observations I've had across the globe. So in the United States, because we have a strong mayor form of government, that the political direction of the mayor every 4 years drives the agenda, and it's actually quite rare for somebody very successful in innovation to be able to stay on 3 or 4 different mayors, because the priorities change so much. So in the US, one of the biggest struggles for a political center is that the mayor has such a strong direction that if the new mayor is not focused, and I'll just give you one example, Atlanta had a new mayor, and they had a cyber attack, and the public was really just against a lot of this new technology. And so they shut down many of the smart city programs that had all been started up before. So I think in the US, because of the strong mayor form of government, we end up with a lot more volatility than, at least externally, I see in Europe, where it's more city council driven. But obviously, Marco has a much better understanding than I do.
For Italy and for Europe, it's a very strange moment. You know, the recovery fund. This is a particular occasion for us to change the paradigm that we try to explain in our presentation, and more than 55% of this new budget, more about 200 billion only for Italy, is dedicated to digital transformation. But as we said before, not only on technological infrastructure, but on the development of the skills of our young or our citizens. We are working on capability skills and new skills for this transformation.
Great, great. Do we have any other questions from the audience? As we're coming up on the hour, I'll give a few minutes in case someone wants to add anything.
So, Philip, if you don't mind, I just wanted to congratulate Marco and Nicola on the Turin City Lab and their ecosystem development, because I think what I see globally is some people look at doing a little bit of innovation internally, Some cities look at doing a few innovation programs, but I think those that engage externally with public and private partnership and build, I think the key to what Nicola said was you want to build an ecosystem. And I think that is so key. And the other thing I'll just add is I find that, I forget the gentleman, he was in charge of innovation and economic development for Aveiro, Portugal. And he pointed out that everybody's solution isn't the same because not everybody lives in the same context. And I think, Turin, leader in automotive manufacturing and automotive makers, focusing on mobility, really leveraging the technology and the partners there. I just think that's a great model for how many cities can innovate. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that, what I think is a great program.
Thank you. That's a great comment. All right. So I think we're coming up on our time. I wanted to thank all of you for all of your contributions. Congratulations on your work, and we hope to have you back at HAE at some point soon. And we hope to HAE hopes to come visit and check out what's really happening on the ground in Turin.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sounds good.
We're really welcoming you.
And Philip, we wait for you in Torino physically.
Yes, well, I'm overdue for a trip back to Italy. So
I'm coming with you, Philip. So I'll be in your luggage.
That sounds good. Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thanks for guests once again. Have a great.
Thanks, Philip. Bye, David.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Marco.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nicola. Take care, Philip. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.